Good evening, everyone. We're going to go over some resume tips and tricks for my advanced placement English for students. So we're going to go ahead and go full screen with this. And, before we begin, I'd like to say that if you haven't already, you need to create an account for Adobe Spark using your student Google account. And then also review the how-to videos posted to the Canvas module Thursday. These were videos that were created by Mrs. Barclay. They are thorough, they are excellent, and they will get you started in the resume process. So what I'm giving you today is not a how-to on the resumes. Refer to those videos. These are just tips and tricks and a few things that came up while we were in the library and a few things that I think it is important for you to know. So before we begin, this was something that Mrs. Barclay presented on, and I think it's important to reiterate. Either clean up or delete your social media. Recruiters and scholarship officers are looking. Even if it's private, act as if it's public. You have to understand that if you're receiving a scholarship, that more or less you're being paid to go to that school. And so these universities have a right to protect their image. And if there are things that are on your social media that are questionable, they reserve the right to revoke that money. There are stories that have made the national news of that exact situation happening. And I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility for you to say, well, I'll just set my stuff to private, and then you get a friend request on Instagram, if anybody even uses that anymore, but you get a friend request from an admissions counselor at the university. And if you deny that friend request, they're going to assume, well, they must have something that they don't want me to see. And so they could very easily revoke any sort of scholarship or award. So you really have to think about how you put yourself out there, especially as a senior in high school. You don't want some sort of stray image to get out there and essentially ruin your reputation. So I would advise to clean it up, keep things that are friendly, things that put forth a positive image in your social media accounts. All right, so the first thing that I think that is important to look at is after you've put your name at the top, your name should feature prominently on the resume. You'll notice that a lot of the templates and a lot of professional resumes have a space under the name for a job title. And if you were professional, this would be something like graphic designer or chemical engineer, whatever you earned your degree in and whatever you were trained in. For example, mine would say English teacher. However, you're a high school student right now, and so what you need to put as a title under your name would be you take your intended field of study and you let that be you be a candidate for that. So, for example, you're not going to put high school student. If you want to major in biology, you would put biology candidate or computer science candidate. Because right now, as a high school senior, that's what you are. Even if you've been accepted, you are still a candidate because things could still occur between now and then to where circumstances may change. I don't anticipate that happening, and you shouldn't anticipate it either, but keep it, stay humble. Have it say computer science candidate or biology candidate. Another thing is do not stress over the class rank unless you're in the top 5%. If you're in the top 10, list the number. However, remember that rank fluctuates, so it's a good idea in this case, if you're going to include class rank, to go with the lower number. So if the number itself, say 7th in the class, is the lowest one, you include that. If the percent is lower, like you're in the top 3% or the top 5%, include that. The lower the number with class rank, the more impressive it looks. ACT score, if you're going to put your composite score on there, do so if it's higher than a 26. Otherwise, put the scores for relevant areas, and if you're unsure which ones are relevant, I would say put the highest scores that you have. So if your English score is high, if your math or science score is high, then go with that. Um, Forgive me for the strange noises. My dog decided to come get into my lap. That is him making the odd sounds. Um, so you want to include numbers that are relevant. If you're majoring in the liberal arts, then you want to include something. You want to include English and reading. Math and science are still good, but put composite if it's a high number. Next up, don't put NHS as a club. I would say that NHS functions as an award. And the reason I say that is because if you are in an interview and somebody says, "Tell me what you did with NHS," you're probably going to say, "Well, I made good grades and I got in," which is still important. All right. I think it's still an honor to be a part of NHS, but it's more of an award. You receive membership because of what you've done. And so don't put NHS as a club unless you are an officer in that club and you have served hours and contributed to the overall functioning of it. Just being in the club isn't really contributing to its functioning. Um, and then include clubs where you have an official duty, position, or service hours requirement. BSA, Z Club, Key Club, any of those, Mu Alpha Theta, especially Mu Alpha Theta if you've been tutoring. So include things where if you were to be asked, what did you do with this club? You could be specific and straightforward and have an answer that would be impressive. Include community service if applicable and make sure it's verifiable. This is community service outside of the school. So if you serve your community with your church or really any other organization, make sure that it can be verified to where if you are interviewing with someone or you get an email and they say, "We saw that you have X amount of community service hours, so we need to talk to someone to verify this." If you say, "Well, there's no one there who can," you may as well just be saying, I didn't do those hours. So make sure it is verifiable, that there is a human being that they can get in touch with to corroborate um, you putting your hours on the resume. All right, next up, use the templates provided in either Spark or Google Docs. Again, Mrs. Barclay gave some really, really good presentations on these. But it needs to be reiterated. Do not reinvent the wheel. I know it's tempting to pick a template and play with the fonts and play with the colors, but if you're a designer working for Adobe, to me that's like saying you're a computer programmer who got hired at Google. Like it's Adobe is the preeminent group of people when it comes to design. And so they are experts in their field. And you may be a colorful and creative person, and I appreciate that. And I think that is awesome. These designers have years, potentially decades of experience working in graphic design. So when they put these together, they made sure they chose the right colors and the right font um, to be both creative and still professional. So use their templates. The next thing too is don't get lost. Again, I know that it can be a rabbit hole. Don't get lost in choosing your template. Don't sit and spend 2 hours trying to find a template that you think feels right versus getting it done. The important thing is that you get the resume done. You can play with all that stuff later on, but getting it done is the important step. And with that being said, that is the end. I thought I had one more slide. Turns out I didn't. So message me with any questions and good luck on your resume. Thank you.